everyone, welcome back. So I'm really excited to review today's lip product because ROM&ND came out with these water removal tints. These are their bare removal tints. There's a total of 8 shades, and the first 4 are light shades, and then the last 4 shades are more mute and darker shades. Previously, I also reviewed Etude's Dear Darling marker tint. This was sort of a watercolor type of lip product. Has a really good stain, dries matte. So this product claims to have a watercolor type of finish, and by that I mean it applies sheer and then it builds up and then you can build up the color to be more pigmented, so to give a nice gradient effect as well. And they also claim this to have a really good stain. So I'm going to be doing transfer tests, I'm going to be doing smudge tests, so let's go ahead and get started. Starting with the packaging, it is quite different from ROM&ND's type of packaging, which is a lot more slim. These are a little bit more small and compact, but they still do have 4.5 grams of product in it. You have the body in the shade color and kind of buffs out, has a round tip, slightly curves upwards instead of downwards. The brush is quite stiff as well. Alright, so starting off first, this is shade number 1, Bare Vanilla. It's described as being a soft nude peach color, and this is a warm light shade. I added 1 layer of this, and you can see it's very sheer and light. I'm going to deepen it a little bit for the full look, but for the gradients look, I wanted to see how sheer it gets. As the name says, you sort of have this peach beige color. Although this is a warm color, it's not too warm. On the chart, it does lean slightly warm, but it's going to be closer to being a neutral shade. So about a minute or 2 has passed, and while I'm talking to you about this product, I can kind of see that the product has sort of dried a bit. It's not really retaining its moisture. When I first applied it, it has this watery type of formula. There was a slight gloss in it, but after a few seconds I find that it has dried up a bit. There's not much of a product. It almost feels as if there's no product on my lips whatsoever. It leaves more of a stain. It doesn't feel drying, but it also doesn't feel like I've applied anything, like it just disappeared. Also for the formula, there's not much blurring, so it's not going to blur the wrinkles of your lips as much. There's not much of a glossy finish. It looks more like a matte finish. But I feel like it does look quite similar to promotional pictures, except that in the promotional picture it seems to have a coral undertone. For this shade, however, there's a little bit of a coral undertone, but it's very, very subtle. It's not going to be as prominent as it looks in the promotional pictures. Overall, you're going to see more of a pink color. Surprisingly, it's not too warm, so it's a little bit more mute and less warm than the promotional pictures. When you first apply it on your lips, it's going to have that similar coral peach color, but once it settles and oxidizes on the lips, for some reason it's not as warm or coral. And again, as I'm talking and time is passing by, you'll see that when I first applied it, it has a very glossy finish, or this dewy gloss finish, but after some time it's going to dry up and it's going to have a matte finish. There's a small semi-gloss, but again, it's going to look more matte than glossy, which is a little bit unfortunate because I was really hoping that it would retain its glossiness. Overall, compared to the gradients look, it does seem to have built up the color a bit. It's really easy to blend and blur. You can see in the outline of my lips right here, I sort of created a nice gradient type of finish, and you do have a few seconds to blend and blur if you need it. However, this doesn't dry my lips. It also doesn't moisturize it as much, so definitely do prep your lips well beforehand. There's not much moisturization. I think the biggest advantage of this is the color. It looks really, really pigmented, and I'm pretty sure it's going to have a really good stain as well. For the finish, it's not really what I expected it to be. I do like the outline of this. I think if I work with it a little bit more, it could look better. So it has this natural finish, not adding much texture or blurriness to it. It just kind of has a stain. Once it dries up, it's going to just look like a stain on your lips with the texture of your lips. So you do want to make sure you prep your lips well beforehand. For this formula, however, it does apply quite watery, quite buildable as well, but I find that it is a little bit difficult to do a gradient look because it's so watery. If I wanted to do a gradient look, I'd probably add a sheer layer and then wait for it to dry and then add another darker layer. Also, it does have a slight fruity scent, but it's not super sweet like Peripera's or Etude's lip product. Very, very subtle. It actually smells quite good. It kind of has this strawberry like type of scent. So let's go ahead with the transfer test. So you can see the stain is really good. It looks just like how it was for the full look. There's a slight stain on the first transfer, but other than that, very pigmented stain. Here's a hand swatch comparison with Bare Vanilla at the bottom, Announced Beige, and then Peach Honeybee. They're quite similar to each other in muteness. Next up, this is shade number 2, Taffy Float. and it's described as being a strawberry pink color. It's a cool light shade. So I have this bubblegum pink color, bunny's tongue type of pink color, semi-vibrant. And again, when you first apply, it has a glossy finish, but it's going to dry matte. This would be really good to use as a base color if you want your lip color to last really long. And again, for the formula, it is quite watery, so the product might seep a little bit into your mouth if you have any excess product. So it does have a bitter taste. However, it's not too watery that it's going to you know, drip all over your lips. It has this like thick type of watery consistency, probably a little bit of gel in it to kind of keep the water from dripping. This would be really good for anyone who's into lip stains. For me personally, I think I have to go over with the gloss or a lip balm or something, because yeah, it's not, the finish is not doing much for me. The shade, however, does look really pretty. I'm actually gonna add just a little bit in the inner corner of my lips because I want to see how it looks as a gradient look. Okay, so there's a little bit of a build-up as a gradient look. I just added a slight layer in the inner corner of my lips, and you see how beautiful that first layer is. Like the initial application looks super beautiful and flattering, has like this semi-glossy finish to it. But the thing about this is that it's going to dry and it's going to look super matte. Even right now when I'm talking, it's slowly drying and you can see that the gloss is slowly disappearing. Regardless, if you want to create gradients like, I recommend adding a first layer, waiting for that to dry. It should dry within a minute, and then adding another layer in the inner corner of your lips. It does have a really nice stain, so it is going to create a really nice gradient look where you want it to be. The only problem is that it's just a problem of time, because if you apply the first layer and you want to do gradient look, it doesn't really create much of that gradient look because it's going to seep in the wrinkles of your lips, and it's just going to overall give a even application. If you want to create a gradient look, apply a light layer, wait for that to dry, and then apply it in the inner corner of your lips, which can be a little bit tedious, but it does have a really good stain, so it should be worth it. I'm gonna go ahead with the full look and then apply a clear glossy finish over to see how it's going to hold up. So now we have the full look. It got a little bit more pigmented. You can see it definitely did build up the color a bit. Sort of this smoothly mauvey pink type of shade. Looking at the promotional pictures, the promotional picture looks more like the gradients like. The more that you apply, the more mauvey pink it's going to look, with a little bit of like a violet purple because it is cool toned. Personally, I do prefer the gradients look better, but for the full look, it looks quite flattering as well. As you know, this is labeled as a light shade, but it actually does look quite mute the more that you apply. The finish is not as impressive as I thought it would be, but one thing about this product that I like is that it doesn't turn red for the stain. Sometimes when the products interact with water, it turns into red stain. For this, it doesn't have any red stain, which is really nice because it maintains the lip shade. It's not gonna smudge. It has a really good stain. This is Peripera's. So this is with a lip gloss. You can see that for ROM&ND, the product doesn't move around, it doesn't smudge, it doesn't bleed. So it's really good to use with a lip gloss or with other lip products, and there doesn't seem to be any unevenness, so it looks quite even on the lips. So here are some hand swatches. I have Taffy Float at the bottom. On top of that is Pink Price and then shade 21. Pink Price can go a few shades darker. Next up, this is shade number 4, Nutty Move. It's described as being a nutty beige color, a semi-mute warm shade. Sort of have a cinnamon brown type of color. It does have a little bit of like a yellow-orange undertone. It does look quite similar to the promotional pictures. This would be a good shade to wear in fall. Currently, I'm not really into orange browns or yellow browns, but for this shade, it is quite sheer and light. So it does look quite flattering. As a base, compared to the promotional pictures, the more that you apply, the more brown it's going to look. It does look semi-rosy once it's oxidized a little bit, and again, you still have that matte finish. I find that for darker shades, you do see a little bit of a glossy, you see a little bit of a shine. Next up, this is shade number 4, Water Grape. It's described as being a muted mauve shade. This is a cool tone shade, a little bit similar to shade number 2, but this can go a few shades darker. They do use purple grapes as part of the promotion, so this grapey purple type of color with a little bit of a pink mauve undertone. It does look quite similar to promotional pictures. I find that the promotional pictures looks more like the gradients look. Quite a flattering and trendy shade. So now we have a more pigmented grapey purple shade. I did try to blend it with a cotton swab, but I find that it doesn't blend that well, especially if you want to create gradients look. So I think a brush will work better, or even with your fingers. I think that's very pigmented. You can see the stain is really nice. And again, there's not much smudging. Here's another hand comparison. I have Pale Plum at the bottom and the Water Grape on top. A little bit similar to each other. Pale Plum is a little bit darker and more purple. For Water Grape, it does look a little bit lighter. Here's Water Grape and Custom Mauve. They probably look most similar to each other. Moving on to the darker shades, we have shade number 5, Apple Ooze. This is described as being an apple red color. On the chart, it slightly leans a little bit more being a warm tone color, but it is going to be closer to being a neutral shade, just slightly warm. It's also nude as well. So I have this classic red color. For the promotional pictures, it doesn't look as vibrant. It's a lot more mute. I feel like we see more pigmented red shade. For some reason, it does seem to have a little bit of a fuchsia pink undertone. So up close, you'll see that it looks more like a fuchsia pink color. Zooming out, it's going to look like a red color, which is really weird because this is considered a warm tone color, but it has fuchsia pink in it, which is a little bit more cool toned. So you see when I apply it, it's like really red, but maybe because it's watery, it kind of disperses. Looks a lot better, but again, it still has that fuchsia pink undertone. The more they apply, the more red it is going to look, like a cherry red color. You can see a little bit of that fuchsia pink color that I was talking about after removing. Alright, next up, this is number 6, Berry Bite. It's described as being a cherry pink color. This is a mute, cool tone shade. It's similar to a promotional picture. I have this berry red type of color. If you're into berry shades, I recommend this. Alright, so now for the folic, it still looks a little bit similar to promotional pictures. The more that you apply it, the more violet to purple you'll see. Except this is number 7, Chili Rush. It's described as being a chili brown color. The name says you still have this brown red color. It does look quite similar to the promotional pictures. So, not really into brown reds, but this looks a little bit similar to Vintage Ocean. For the folic, you have a more pigmented rosy brown color. You can see from the lip swatch that it does have a very dark brown type of color, but for some reason when I try to apply a lot, it doesn't build up. So the thing about this product is that because it's watery and it dries matte, you have to apply this layer. You have to apply layer by layer if you want a darker shade. If I apply one layer, it's going to have its limit of shade, if that makes sense. So you have to wait for that layer to dry and then add another layer to deepen the shade, which can be a little bit tedious because you have to wait for it to dry. About 30 seconds for each layer to dry if you want to deepen the shade. So I have Chili Rush at the bottom and Vintage Ocean on top. Quite similar to each other medicine shade. Last but not least, we have number 8, Deepen Red. This is described as being a deep red color. This is a cool nude shade. So I have this grape-like black type of color, like a cherry red, a very dark purple type of color. Seems to have a little bit of black in it. So we have the folic, very flattering, quite a unique shade for a Korean lip product because you don't really see this shade a lot. So now we have a more pigmented cherry black color. A very beautiful, a very demure shade. Very flattering, it looks very similar to the promotional pictures. We have Black Honey at the bottom and Deepen Red. Really similar to each other. Deepen Red is a lot more pigmented and has a really good stain as well. So if you like Black Honey, definitely look into the Deepen Red. Last but not least, I'm going to go in with my intro and outro video. I'm going to use number 2, Taffy Float as my base. And I might need 2 layers of this, so I'm gonna wait for this to dry and then add another layer. I'm gonna use number 4, Water Grape in the inner corner of my lips. And that is the intro and outro lip combo. Alright, so in conclusion, there's a lot to say, but overall there were a variety of shades. The biggest advantage of these lip products is the stain. Really good to use as a base. I think these would also look really good with matte finishes as well. The lighter shades are very MLB. I kind of found these a little bit high maintenance because you do have to wait to let it dry and then apply another layer to build up the color. Regardless, it does have really good pigmentation. Kind of similar finish to Etude's Marker Tint. Etude's Marker Tint dries a lot faster. within seconds. For ROM&ND, it takes at least 30 seconds for it to dry. It's watery, but it does have a slight gel-like formula. And for the finish, I was hoping it to have a watercolor-like finish where it gives a nice lip lining effect on the outer corner of your lips. I find that it doesn't really do much. Pretty much wraps up today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.